Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've ever found yourself in a pub in London, arguing about whether a game should be called football or soccer, this is for you.
Hmm.
Or if you've ever tried to explain the absolute magnificence of a fourth down conversion to a friend from Europe, then yeah, this deep dive is definitely for you.
He really is.
We are plunging headfirst into the linguistic and cultural battleground that defines two massive sporting cultures. We're talking about the eternal divide between football and soccer.
It's a debate that, on the surface, seems almost trivial, right? It's just a word.
Just a word.
But understanding why these two words even exist and why they point to such profoundly different sports experiences in the UK and the US, it's really a gateway. It's a way to understand the cultural DNA of both nations.
It is.
We're talking about two completely distinct social contracts with sport.
Absolutely. I mean, for someone in, say, Manchester or Glasgow,
Oh.
the word football is totally unambiguous.
Oh, completely.
It's the roar of the crowd, the smell of the grass, the generations of inherited and often torturous allegiance to a local club. It's a core part of their identity. It's just woven into the history of their town.
But then you flip it. For an American, football means something else entirely. It's the calculated, specialized violence of the gridiron.
Right. A chess match.
It's a chess match, yeah. The playbook, the intense strategic calculation behind a fourth down gamble, and just the sheer spectacle of it all, the kind of quasi-religious unifying nature of the Super Bowl.
These are two profoundly different experiences.
Completely, both to watch and to participate in, and yet they're both claiming the same name.
So we have two distinct worlds united by this, shared historical root, but they use overlapping names. So our mission today is to trace that divergence.
Where did the words come from?
Exactly. Why did the rules split? And I think most importantly, how did the rituals, the scale, and the emotional investment become so dramatically different on each side of the Atlantic?
And we've synthesized a huge stack of material for this. We're talking sporting histories, cultural anthropology notes, all of it.
All to give you the ultimate shortcut to understanding this profound split.
And we're going to start by, I think, dismantling the biggest misconception right out of the gate.
Okay.
So many people, especially outside the U.S., they assume that soccer is some modern American invention. A jarring intrusion into the beautiful game's lexicon.
Right, like we just made it up to be different.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Because that assumption is entirely backward.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
The historical reality is fascinating and, honestly, pretty simple. The word soccer is unequivocally British.
Unequivocally. Born in the hallowed halls of Oxford University in the late 19th century.
And that one fact just completely reframes the entire argument. It shows us how a linguistic export became the necessary standard for Americans.
Let's get into it.
So to really understand how soccer entered the global vocabulary, you have to rewind. We have to go back to the 1860s in Britain.
Right. And before this pivotal decade, football was a wonderfully chaotic concept.
Chaos is a good word for it.
It really was. It was less a single sport and more a whole category of games, played across different schools, villages, regions.
With rules that change depending on where you're standing.
Exactly. I mean, that fluidity meant there was huge disagreement about the most fundamental parts of the game. If you went to rugby school, for instance, you expected to pick up the ball and run with it. Tackles were, encouraged.
But at other public schools, handling the ball was strictly forbidden.
So you can imagine what happened when they tried to play each other.
It must have been a mess.
Yeah.
Just arguments over the rule book.
Which is why there was this powerful movement toward standardization. They had to figure it out.
And that standardization arrived in 1863, a truly pivotal date. A group of clubs and schools, they got together in London.
And this is what we now know as the foundation of the Football Association, the FA.
Right, the FA. And their goal was crystal clear. Establish a single, unified set of rules.
And the key rule, the one that really mattered, was prioritizing kicking the ball and limiting handling to just the goalkeeper.
So the creation of the FA rules, that's essentially the birth certificate of the global game we know today.
It is. But here's the critical linguistic context. They had to name this new codified game.
And they had to name it in a way that distinguished it from the other major dominant code that had also just formalized its rules.
The one where you could handle the ball.
The one where you could run with it. The one codified by schools that favored that running game. Which was, of course,
Rugby football.
Exactly.
So to differentiate these two major diverging codes, the FA game was officially christened Association Football.
A very functional technical name.
Purely functional. It was just meant to separate it from rugby football. They're both considered types of football, but one was governed by the FA and the other by the rugby system.
So now we have the formal names, Association Football and Rugby Football, which are, let's be honest, a bit of a mouthful.
Especially if you're in a university common room.
And this is where the linguistic magic happens. This is the Oxford University slang tradition.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because Oxford students in the mid to late 19th century had this peculiar, almost whimsical habit.
Well, the R suffix.
The R suffix. They'd create these informal, playful abbreviations. They'd take a word, strip it down, and just add to the end. It was like a linguistic shortcut, a sort of exclusive code shared among the educated elite.
And we see it so clearly in the parallel game. Rugby football was just too long to say all the time.
So students shortened rugby to a rugger.
A term you still hear occasionally today, it perfectly illustrates the trend.
And they followed that exact same linguistic convention for the other game. They needed a snappy name for Association Football.
So the formal name gets truncated to its base. Association becomes ASOC.
ASOC, and then you apply that universally popular slang suffix, the R.
And it morphs first into a soccer. You can almost hear them saying it. Association, ASOC, a soccer.
And from there, it naturally smooths out, just for ease of pronunciation and flow, into the concise, two-syllable term we all know today.
Soccer.
Soccer. This entire process, from the formal name of the organizing body to the slang term used on the pitch, it all happened entirely within the social sphere of British public schools and universities.
This was British slang through and through. It was a necessary abbreviation to distinguish between the two dominant forms of football being played at the same time.
And this point is absolutely crucial for our listener to get. For decades, well into the 20th century, even after World War II.
Football and soccer were used interchangeably in the UK.
And acceptably. If you used the word soccer, it just meant you were talking about association football, not the rugby game. It wasn't derogatory, it wasn't foreign.
No, it was common, comfortable slang.
The divergence only happened later.
Yeah.
And it was driven by necessity in the United States.
Right. While Britain was consolidating association football as their cultural king, across the Atlantic, a different version of football was just exploding in popularity.
American football. A true hybrid. It took the strategy of rugby, running with the ball, and combined it with elements of the original association rules.
And this gridiron game, with its specialized positions, its aggressive tackling, and that very distinct stop-start rhythm.
It became the dominant sport in the U.S. So by the time association football started to gain any real traction in America, Americans already had their football.
And that created an immediate and severe linguistic problem.
A huge problem. If you told an American spectator you were going to a football match, they'd assume you meant the aggressive, helmet-clad, yard-gaining gridiron game.
Total confusion.
Constant, utter confusion. So to avoid it, Americans desperately needed a separate, easily understood term for the global game.
And what term did they choose?
They adopted the existing, perfectly acceptable, centuries-old British slang term.
Soccer. It solved their problem instantly and permanently. The irony is just enormous. The Americans didn't invent the word.
Not at all. They just adopted a linguistic export that was sitting right there, ready to be used.
And the reason the British dropped it is just as revealing.
It is. Our analysis suggests that the term soccer only really started to fall out of favor in Britain in the mid-20th century.
And the timing on that aligns with two major factors, right?
Yeah, first, the growing dominance of association football just meant the distinction from rugby was less necessary in common speech. Everyone just knew what you meant by football.
It became the default.
It became the default. And second, and this is perhaps more psychologically resonant, it fell out of favor, at least partly, as a reaction to its growing popularity and necessary use in the United States.
So as America took ownership of the word, it started to feel foreign.
A little less authentic to the British palate, yeah, despite its Oxford origins.
The key takeaway here is just essential. Soccer is a British linguistic export that the UK simply stopped using when the internal need for that linguistic distinction faded.
And the Americans kept using it because, for them, the other football, the gridiron one, became their cultural king, making that distinction absolutely necessary.
And that sets the stage perfectly for exploring how these two cultures created two fundamentally different relationships with their version of football.
Now we cross back to the UK, where
Yeah.
football is so much more than just a Sunday game or a midweek distraction.
Oh, absolutely.
It is fundamentally described as a cultural pillar. It's a source of identity and a profound, often inherited, weekly ritual that's woven into the social fabric.
This isn't just entertainment. For huge parts of the population, especially in the industrial North and the Midlands, it's a necessary part of community life.
And the absolute core of that cultural identity is the unwavering, often irrational loyalty to a local club.
We really need to emphasize how deep this goes. This allegiance isn't a choice you make every season. It's often inherited.
Passed down through generations like a family heirloom.
Yeah, it's a tribal marker, a geographical identity, and let's be honest, a historical burden all wrapped into one.
And that deep connection means the club's fortunes are literally tied to the emotional states of the community. A win dictates happiness for the week.
And a loss can result in this quiet, collective misery that just permeates the workplace and the home.
And the financial fortunes of the club, which often stem from the rise and fall of these industrial towns, are reflected right there in the stands. This is why the working class roots are so important.
The club embodies the resilience, the history, and often the hardship of the local area.
And this inherited geographical loyalty is intensified by something that's totally unique to the UK and European system.
The structure of the league system, specifically the concept of relegation and promotion.
Absolutely. This is a massive distinction from the US model. In the US, a professional franchise is generally safe. They might have a terrible year.
But they'll never be kicked out of the league.
Never. In the UK, the threat is existential. Your club can perform poorly and be relegated to a lower division. Sometimes that means plunging into financial ruin.
That threat of relegation adds this unbearable tension to every single game, especially near the end of the season.
It raises the stakes so far beyond just athletic victory. It becomes a fight for the club's survival and, by extension, for the local community's pride. That weight of history and existential threat makes the emotional investment just incomparable.
And this deep history dictates the nature of the great rivalries. These aren't just manufactured games for TV.
No, these are grudges. They're steeped in decades, sometimes centuries, of local pride and geographic competition.
Take the North London Derby between Arsenal and Tottenham. It's a clash between neighboring boroughs. It's a cultural fight over bragging rights in the capital.
Or you consider the bitter, deep-seated rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester United. That animosity isn't just about football.
Not at all. It's rooted in the historical economic competition between the two cities. One, a massive shipping port, Liverpool, and the other, the industrial heartland of cotton and manufacturing, Manchester.
So when those two teams play, the competitive history of the entire northwest of England just comes to a head.
But the ritual itself, it begins long before kickoff. We have to detail the pre-match pilgrimage, which is synonymous with British football culture.
The pub.
The pub. The pre-match visit to the pub is absolutely quintessential. Pubs near the stadium, they just transform completely. They become these unofficial clubhouses.
Packed to capacity, wall to wall with fans and team colors.
Standing room only. But the noise isn't chaos. It's a collective rising hum of anticipation.
And you see fans singing the traditional club anthems. You hear them dissecting the manager's tactical genius or lack thereof.
Arguing over the starting lineup over a pint. It's a collective energy that just builds momentum.
It's communal. It fosters a camaraderie that transcends age and class, and that shared anticipation is often described as being as important to the match day experience as the 90 minutes of football itself.
And then that energy just spills into the stadium. The atmosphere inside a traditional UK ground is so unique because of its organic nature.
Yeah, you don't have jumbotrons flashing "make some noise"
Yeah.
to prompt cheering.
Not at all. The noise is constant, it's unscripted, and it is entirely driven by the action on the pitch and the history in the stands.
And the chants and songs, they are remarkable cultural artifacts in themselves.
They really are. They're creative, they're deeply humorous, and they're highly personal to the club's history. They use this razor-sharp wit to mock rivals.
Or they tell the stories of the club's greatest players and victories. This isn't entertainment produced for the crowd.
It's entertainment produced by the crowd, and that fuels the intensity right back onto the pitch.
And strategically, this is where the game itself is so different from the U.S. model. The fluidity of association football, the continuous 45-minute halves, the lack of timeouts, the constant running.
It demands deep endurance and a really different kind of strategic focus.
And the crowd's role is to sustain that intensity over long, continuous stretches of play. to influence the momentum without any interruption.
The sport ultimately acts as this powerful social leveler. Because of its working class origins, it is a common language spoken everywhere. It crosses social and economic divides.
Yeah, and our research shows its historical role as a vehicle for social commentary. I mean, clubs and players have often been key figures in campaigns against discrimination, using that global platform to effect genuine change.
And finally, that passion finds a different unifying expression during international tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
When England, Scotland, or Wales play in the Euros or the World Cup, it generates this unifying national passion. It's a massive collective wave of hope that traditionally ends in agonizing heartbreak.
Always.
But that heartbreak itself becomes another layer of shared national identity. It's community, pain, and hope all wrapped up in 90 minutes.
So now let's cross back to the U.S., where football is an entirely different cultural construction. The passion for American football is undeniably intense, but the culture surrounding it is defined by its massive scale
A highly specialized strategic environment for sure.
and an emphasis on pure spectacle and its deep, complex integration with the educational system.
The story of American football becoming the nation's cultural king is so closely tied to the rise of mass media, especially television.
Absolutely. The calculated violence, the stop-start rhythm of the game, that distinct separation between plays.
It made it perfectly suited for commercial broadcasting. It was easy to digest in that post-war era, and television turned it into a shared national experience.
And today, the National Football League, the NFL, is a genuine cultural and commercial behemoth. Teams are massive sources of civic pride.
But unlike the UK model, they're rarely tied to that deep, localized working-class history of a single neighborhood. They represent the city or the state as a whole.
And they're often playing in these gleaming, publicly funded stadiums.
And the ritual of the American football season is just absolute. Sunday is consecrated.
Sure.
It's a day of ritual viewing that's as ingrained in the national calendar as Thanksgiving.
Which is a holiday that has basically been co-opted by the sport.
It really has.
Strategically, the game is fascinatingly different from association football. Association football is all about endurance and continuous flow.
Whereas the NFL is about specialized execution and hyper-strategy.
With a massive roster, players have extremely specialized roles. You have tackles, receivers, linebackers, and they focus only on their limited explosive function.
And this specialization is what makes American football a true chess match. It's a game of geometry, physics, and strategy, all broken into downs.
Which brings us to one of the central concepts we mentioned earlier, the strategic brilliance of the fourth down conversion.
This is the critical risk-reward calculation. When a team has used 3 attempts, 3 downs, to move 10 yards, they face the 4th down.
And they have a choice. They can kick the ball away, which is a punt, or they can attempt to gain the remaining yards to convert.
And the decision to go for it on 4th down is such a high-stakes calculation. It's often guided by intense statistical modeling now.
It symbolizes that aggressive mathematical approach to strategy that defines the modern game. It's calculated risk over continuity.
Okay, now, let's talk ritual. In the UK, it's the pub. In the US, the equivalent couldn't be more different.
The tailgate party.
The tailgate party.
And the difference in scale tells the entire story. Tailgating takes place in these massive parking lots that surround American stadiums.
It's not an indoor affair. It is a massive, decentralized, celebratory outdoor feast.
Fans arrive hours early, transforming a concrete parking lot into this temporary neighborhood of team spirit.
And you see these elaborate setups. Massive grills, smokers, coolers of drinks, and all these yard games like cornhole or ladder toss.
It's a festival of consumption, preparation, and community. The energy is expansive and celebratory, a stark contrast to the often compressed, introspective intensity of the British pub.
And while this tradition is essential to the professional game day, its roots trace back really deep into college football, almost all the way back to the very first games in 1869.
But the peak of American spectacle culture is undeniably the Super Bowl.
There's nothing else like it. This event has entirely transcended sport to become a de facto national holiday and a truly global cultural event.
And the game itself is often secondary for millions and millions of viewers.
Right. What matters is the spectacle surrounding it. The halftime show is a massive, multi-million-dollar production featuring the world's biggest music stars, designed to rival any stadium concert.
And the commercialism is integrated into the cultural experience itself. Super Bowl commercials are a phenomenon. Brands spend millions for just a few seconds of airtime.
And they create ads specifically designed to be discussed the next day at work.
The Super Bowl is ultimately a celebration of American ingenuity, massive consumerism, and highly polished entertainment, all rolled into one highly scripted billion-dollar broadcast.
But to understand the deep emotional texture of U.S. football culture fully, you have to understand a crucial distinction that has virtually no parallel in the UK model.
And that is the gigantic revenue-generating enterprise of college football.
In the UK, university sport is typically just recreational.
In the U.S., high-level college football operates as a semi-professional enterprise. The scale rivals most professional leagues globally. These programs generate hundreds of millions of dollars.
And the games are played in enormous stadiums, often holding well over 100,000 spectators, creating this immense, concentrated noise.
And the passion at the collegiate level is often considered more intense and more fiercely localized than the NFL.
Why is that?
Because the teams represent alma maters, regional identities, and these really deep-seated traditions.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's these traditions that create atmospheres unlike anywhere else in the sporting world. They fuel that hyper-local passion. They are unique, powerful rituals that act as defining characteristics of the school or the region.
And we have some phenomenal examples of this ritualistic power. I mean, consider the whiteout at Penn State.
Incredible.
Every single person in the 107,000-seat stadium wears white, creating this intimidating, unified wall of color and sound for the opposing team. It is a visual and audible statement of total commitment.
Or the entrance tradition at Virginia Tech, where the team takes the field to the thunderous roar of Metallica's Enter Sandman.
The intensity is so overwhelming. The mass jumping and noise, it has been reported to actually register on local seismographs.
That gives you a measure of the physical force of this passion.
Then you have Texas A&M and the tradition of the 12th man. The entire student body stands shoulder to shoulder for the entire duration of the game.
It's a constant physical commitment.
It is. It shows they are ready to enter the game and support the team. It symbolizes deep commitment and unwavering support. It's a profound act of unity.
And the pageantry goes on and on. Wisconsin's jump around, Clemson's running down the hill.
And one of the most heartwarming traditions, the Hawkeye Wave at Iowa, where fans wave to the hundreds of children watching from the Children's Hospital that overlooks the stadium during the game.
These traditions, backed by massive polished marching bands, dedicated cheerleading squads, and often bizarre mascots, they cement college football as this vibrant, essential, and fiercely ritualistic pillar of American sports culture.
All defined by spectacle and immense scale. And it's important to note the economic weight here, too. This college enterprise acts as a developmental feeder system for the professional league.
Which is completely unlike the UK system, where professional clubs develop players through their own internal youth academies.
Right. The U.S. system integrates the educational structure with the professional sports hierarchy in a way that is globally unique. And that just amplifies the visibility and cultural importance of the college game even more.
So we've explored two deeply entrenched yet wildly different cultures. On one side, you have the UK's model of inherited, geographically bound loyalty.
Existential threats via relegation and that communal pub spirit.
And on the other, the US model of grand spectacle, hyper-specialization, billion-dollar entertainment, and the powerful ritual of college football.
But while American football remains the cultural king, especially in television metrics, the landscape is dynamic.
It is.
And the sport known as soccer, our British linguistic export, has seen a dramatic and undeniable surge in popularity in recent decades across the U.S. It's a genuine cultural shift.
And it's driven by several key factors.
The rise of Major League Soccer, MLS, is certainly a significant driver. It's operating at a much higher level than previous attempts at American pro soccer.
And it's successfully building local fan bases. And then secondly, the globalization of media means international leagues. The Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, they're all easily accessible on American screens.
And that's creating millions of new fans. But we must also acknowledge the critical role of the U.S. women's national team.
Oh, absolutely. Their consistent global success has captivated national attention and inspired generations of young players.
It established soccer as a deeply competitive and viable sport in the American psyche.
And crucially, there's the demographic factor. A rapidly growing Hispanic population in the U.S. brings with it a deep-seated, often generational passion for the global game.
Instantly elevating its profile and providing a ready-made, knowledgeable audience.
So the current U.S. soccer culture is really thriving, especially in its dedicated supporter groups.
And these groups often consciously adopt and adapt the passionate atmosphere, the singing and chanting rituals of their European and Latin American counterparts,
They're creating a traditional, communal, local club identity that feels very distinct from the spectacle game of the NFL.
which creates a fascinating contrast. The slang term soccer is returning to its original purpose, defining the association game, and it's bringing with it cultural practices that challenge the dominance of American spectacle.
The trajectory is undeniable. American sports culture is learning to embrace the flow state, communal passion of soccer alongside the stop-start brilliance of gridiron.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out, the difference between football and soccer is about so much more than a linguistic quirk or a simple preference for kicking versus throwing.
It's a reflection of how two nations choose to structure their competitive spirit, define their community, and express collective identity.
The UK's sporting identity is rooted in that generational loyalty, the communal spirit of the pub, and the raw, often unscripted passion that's driven by the existential threat of relegation.
It's history, community, and local allegiance above all else. It is the deep connection to the specific ground and the specific team.
And the U.S. identity is defined by the grand spectacle of the event. It's the epic tailgate parties, the highly specialized mathematical strategy, the billion-dollar entertainment extravaganza of the Super Bowl.
And that deep, often quasi-religious fervor reserved especially for the mammoth college teams.
It's about athleticism, calculation, and sport as a massive, unifying national event that's tailored for television.
Ultimately, though, they are two vibrant, deeply cherished cultural phenomena that stem from that shared sporting ancestry established back in the 1860s.
The difference is simply the cultural expression and the language they chose to develop.
The fundamental human need for community, for identity, and for thrilling dramatic tension remains exactly the same.
Exactly. Whether you're dealing with a rain-soaked Tuesday night, watching your team fight relegation in Stoke, or a sun-drenched Sunday afternoon watching a critical fourth-down conversion in Green Bay, the passion is universal.
The method of delivery is what sets them apart.
Precisely.
We've dissected the cultural contrast between the UK's historical community loyalty and the US's spectacular consumer-driven culture. We've traced the surprising British origin of the word soccer and examined how American football became entrenched through media spectacle and collegiate tradition.
But here's the final provocative thought for you to explore. Given the deep-seated traditions of college football and the colossal commercial scale of the NFL spectacle, how might the continued organic growth of Major League Soccer,
Which, as you said, often intentionally mimics the traditional communal atmosphere of global soccer.
right, focusing on local supporter groups and organic noise, how might that fundamentally reshape or challenge deeply ingrained American viewing habits over the coming decade?
That is the trajectory to watch as these two worlds continue to intersect and influence each other. Will the traditional unscripted communal passion of association football find a way to carve out an equal space in the land of spectacle?
Fascinating question.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the surprisingly complex cultural and linguistic history of the world's most popular sport, or rather sports. We'll see you next time.